So today we're going to be talking about making a works cited for your text analysis. So first of all, you need to know the format that it needs to go in, because a works cited page has a couple of things that you need to remember. Number one, it's got to have its own page. Don't tack this on somewhere at the end of the essay. Even though it's not very much information, it still has to have its own page. You need to title it, so you'll need to have works cited at the top of your page. Don't underline it, don't bold it, don't make it bigger than anything else. This should all be in Times New Roman 12-point font, double spaced, just like all the rest of your essay. Other things, when you make a works cited entry, the very first line of every entry needs to be flush with the margin, meaning you just hit enter when it's left justified and you just start typing. But if it goes on to that second line, you need to tab over. And in fact, if it goes on to a third or a fourth line, every line except the very first one needs to be indented. So you can see on our example, here this is flush with the first line, or the first line is flush with the margin, and then we've got an indentation here. If you have more than one entry, which you probably won't for your text analysis, but you definitely will for later essays, you need to alphabetize based on the very first letter in each entry. So we have a B here, a C here, and an L here. So this is in alphabetical order. To make sure your works cited page is correctly formatted, you can always check it against the example in your Bridging the Difference book on page 47. Now I want to just quickly show you how to set up your works cited page. So I'm on my brand new page, the last page of my essay. I want to hit center. I type works cited. Now you can see this is on the wrong font. So I need to highlight this and change it to the correct font. And now I can start my entry. So see, I just hit enter. The cursor is blinking. I'm flush with the margin. You can tell because up here it's highlighted the left thing. So now I can type my works cited entry. So if I'm doing a book, I can do last name, comma, first name. I can do the title of the book. I can do the city that it was published in, the company that published it, the year it was published, and then the medium. Now I need to go in and italicize the title. I can just do it like that. And there's my works cited entry. Simple as that. Now if I had more information, I'm just going to put some gibberish in here. If I had more information, then it would go on to a second line. And I would need to indent that second line. So here's what's going to happen when you press the tab button. It's going to tab over everything. How do you fix that? Hit backspace, hit enter a couple of times, try it again, and see, it worked that time. So a lot of students come to me and are like, oh, I can't make it work, it tabs over the whole entry. If you hit enter a couple of times and then hit backspace and try it again, I promise you it will work. And if it's not working, then your computer is crazy and you need to go get IT to look at it. So don't tell me you can't make this work. Now here, now it's gone down onto the third line. So what do I need to do? I need to tab that over as well. So I know this is just gibberish, but if your lines went down to, or your entry went down to the second and third line, if it went down to the fourth line, everything except this first line needs to be indented. Now, don't do this backwards. I see a lot of students indent the first line and not the others, and I think they're getting confused because they're thinking, oh, it's like a paragraph where the first line gets indented. Nope, it's exactly the opposite. No, you don't have to memorize this. You just have to know to look at an example to make sure that yours is formatted correctly. So just look at that example that's on page 47 in your Bridging the Difference book, and you'll see the way it's supposed to look. All right, so let's go back to our slideshow. Okay, so now we need to talk about italics versus quotation marks, because in that example, I showed you that the title of a book gets italicized. There's a difference between what gets italicized and what goes in quotation marks in a works cited page. Italics is reserved for big things. So the title of a book, the title of a website, the title of a magazine or journal, the title of a documentary or a movie or a TV show, the title of a CD. All of these things are big things that can get broken down into smaller pieces. So all of these titles go in italics. Italics are for big things. Now the quotation marks, see how little and cute they are? They go around pieces of things, so smaller things, things that were taken out of the big italicized things. So if it can be broken down into pieces, it goes in italics. If it is one of those pieces taken from something bigger, it goes in quotation marks. For example, a book title is italicized, but an article from a book goes in quotations. A website name is italicized, but an article from a website goes in quotations. Same thing for an article in a magazine or a journal, a TV episode name, a song title. So again, smaller things go in quotation marks, bigger things go in italics. So if you wanted for your text analysis to do an essay from Bridging the Difference, how would you do that? How would you make a works cited page for it? Well, first of all, you have to know what kind of source it is. Now, it's a collection of different essays by different authors. So that's going to be called, starts with an A. Any ideas? We call it an anthology, a work from an anthology. Now, how can you use your Bridging the Difference book to make your works cited page? Well, first of all, you can go to page 39, which is where the information about making a works cited page starts. It's got a list of how to format the page, and then it's got a list of different types of sources that you might use for a paper, and how to take information from those, or take the information about those sources and put it in a works cited entry. So it starts with print sources, and then it goes on to electronic online sources, and then other types of sources. So as long as you know what kind of source you have, you can use your Bridging the Difference book to make a works cited page for any of those sources. So if you wanted to do an essay from Bridging the Difference, here's what you need to know, and you can find this on page 41. So this is going to be work from an anthology. You need to know the author's name, the title of the essay, the title of the anthology, the editor's names, the city that the book was published in, the company that published it, the year it was published, the page numbers that the essay appears on in the book, and the publication medium. Now, medium means what kind of source is it, and usually it's going to be either print, web, or something like television or film. So if it's something you can hold in your hands and actually physically turn the pages on it, like you can do with your Bridging the Difference book, it's going to be print. Or if you do an essay and you actually got it out of a magazine, well, you can physically flip the pages of that magazine, so that means it's going to be print. So how do you find this information? Well, first of all, let's deal with the information specific to the book itself. We know the title, it's Bridging the Difference. Now, we need to know some of this other stuff. If you turn to the back of the very first page, you see the copyright page. So here we have copyright 2013 by Peter Castor and Monica Sheehy. So now we know the year that it came out, and these are the editors. This, by so-and-so, that's the editors. So we know that information. Who published it? What company? Well, if you look down, you'll see Fountainhead Press. That's the company that published it. And when you're looking for the company, the easy way to figure it out quickly is to look at the spine of the book. So turn it to the spine, look down, and see underneath that little picture, that little artsy picture, it says Fountainhead Press. So we know that that is the company. What city? Well, if we look at this address, it says Southlake, Texas. So that's where it was published. Now, all we need is Southlake, the name of the city. Don't put Texas in there. MLA only wants the city. So now we know all the information about the book. Now we need to pick an essay. Let's say you wanted to do the essay Talking with Your Fingers, which if you go to the table of contents is the very first essay listed under readings. It's got the name of the essay, the name of the author, John McWhorter, and the page, 89 is where it starts. So if we flip to 89, we can see, okay, it starts on page 89, it ends on page 92. So now we have all the information that we need. Here's what it would look like. We've got the author's last name, comma, first name, the essay name in quotation marks, the names of the editors, the name of the book in italics, because remember the essay is a smaller piece of something bigger, so it goes in quotations. The book title is something big that can be broken down into smaller pieces, so it goes in italics. We've got the name of the city, colon, the name of the company, comma, the year it came out, those page numbers, and then print as the medium. Now, notice how the author is last name, comma, first name, but the editors are written first and last. So when it comes to names within your works cited entries, the only time you'll ever do last name, comma, first name is if you're listing your very first author. Meaning, if there's one author, it'll be last name, comma, first name. If there's more than one, if Joe Smith had helped write this essay, it would be McWhorter, comma, John, and Joe Smith. Why? Because the only time you invert anyone's name is if it's the author and it's the very first thing in the whole works cited entry. So if the name is not this very first thing in the entry, it will always be first name, last name. So don't get confused about that. Now, what if you're doing a documentary? Well, documentary or movie or film, they're all done the same way. They can all be found on page 45, number 3, where it says film. So here's what you need to know. The name of the documentary, the name of the director, the name of the performers or host or narrator, the production company, the year it was released, and the publication medium. So the medium for a documentary or a movie, it's always going to be film. So just write film. Now, how do we find all this information? You might not have the DVD sitting right there. And if you don't, well, you're going to have to find it somehow. There's this lovely little website called imdb.com, which stands for Internet Movie Database. You can find every bit of information that you need on any documentary or movie or TV show on this website. So let's take a look at it. Now we're going to use Where in the World is Osama bin Laden as our example. So if I type in, see, I didn't even have to finish it. It's already found it for me. I can just click on it. Now, so I know the title. What else do I need? I need the year. There it is right there. I need the director. There's his name right there. I need a performer. I can go to stars and I can just pick the first one. There might be a whole list here. You can just do the first one and that's going to be enough. So the only other piece of information I need is the company that released it. So for that, I have to scroll down here. You scroll under the cast, under this information, scroll down till you see company credits. Here we have the Weinstein Company. Now there's some others listed here too. Don't worry about those. Whatever comes first, list that company. That's all you need. So now that I have my information, I just need to put it in the correct order. And here's what it looks like. I've got the title of the documentary in italics. I've got DIR period, which stands for director. I've got PERF, which stands for the performer. Now, for a lot of your documentaries, the director and the performer might be the same person, and that's okay. That's really common with documentaries. Don't forget to put these abbreviated titles so that it shows who's doing what. And remember, like I just said about the anthology, because the name is not the first thing in the entry, it's going to be first name, last name. I've got the company. Now you could put the Weinstein Company, or you can just put Weinstein, and that's fine, comma, 2008, the year, and film. So for a television show, that's on that same page, page 45, and it's listed as television or radio program. Here's what you need to know. The title of the episode, the title of the show, the network or station, the date aired, and the publication medium, which is going to be television. And spell it out, don't put TV, put television. Now, bridging the difference is going to say you can put other information here, call letters and city and supplemental information. Don't worry about that. Only put these things that are listed here. You can follow that example in the book for the X-Files. That's what I want yours to look like. Don't worry about including anything else. Now let's say you watch this streaming through Netflix, or you watched it on YouTube or something like that. Don't worry about that yet. Please go ahead and cite your TV show as a TV show. Why? Because it's just so much easier on you. If you cite it as something else, it gets really tricky. So cite it for now just as if you watched it on TV. We can find most of this information the same way we found our documentary information, only I actually recommend using Google instead of going straight to IMDb. Because if you go straight to IMDb, it's going to want you to know the season that that episode was in, and you might not know that offhand. So if I just type in Penn and Teller bullshit, and then I want to do the vaccines episode. So if I type that in, well, down here it takes me right to the right page on IMDb. So I can just click on that, and now I have, my title, the title of the show, title of the episode. Now I have my air date. Now, if you watched it on TV, whatever your show is, then you can actually use that date, the date that you watched it. If you didn't, if you watched it in some other way, you can use the original air date, and that's perfectly fine. So I'm still missing information about what network this was on. And so if I didn't know, I could just Google it, because that actually isn't going to be on IMDb. But if I type in Penn and Teller bullshit and then go to, well, it already says it right here, SHO, but if I didn't know, I could type in network and it pops up right here. Showtime is the name of the network. So you can do an easy Google search and usually find the network that whatever show you watched originally appeared on. So now I've got all my information, and here's how it looks when you put it all together. The title of the episode in quotation marks because it's a piece of something bigger. The television show in italics because it's the bigger thing that can be broken down into something smaller. The network name, the air date, which has to be in this format, the day, the abbreviated month, and the year. So make sure that you're putting it in that format. And then television is the medium. All right, so if you want to do a different type of source, a debate, a speech, a political ad, something like that, so few people do those that I'm not going to bother going over them. Come talk to me if you want to do one of those, and I'll make sure that your works cited is in the right format. All right, so some great resources. Bridging the difference, like I said, page 39 is where the works cited information starts. And then after that, you've got a list of different sources and how to make your works cited entries from those different types of sources. EasyBib and other websites like it. A lot of people like to use these. A lot of these types of websites just have a list of information that you need, you put it in, and then they organize the information for you. Please use those with caution because they're not always correct. I've seen them repeat information and put extra information that wasn't necessary. I've had some students say that EasyBib for some reason defaults to an older version of MLA and you have to go in and manually change it to the updated version. So don't trust these, because if you get it wrong and you say, oh, but EasyBib said it was this, it's still wrong. So please double check them if you're using these kinds of websites. If not, then you're taking that risk onto yourself. Other things with EasyBib is that it usually doesn't use the right font. So if you're copying and pasting into your own paper, make sure you go in and change it to Times New Roman 12-point font. And if you put it in your paper and it looks funky, please hit backspace and make sure that the works cited entry goes down, it goes all the way onto the line. So let me show you really quickly what I mean. So this is actually not good because of what it's doing. So let's do that and backspace it if we can. So what I mean is it should wrap all the way to the end of this line before it goes down to the second one. So this one, we can actually go back up to here. Now this is, nonsense, which is why it looks funky like this. But what I've seen a lot of people do is, let's say EasyBib is just doing weird formatting things, and I've seen them do things like that on their paper. Don't do that. This first line should wrap all the way to the end where it naturally goes on to the next line. So don't do weird things like this. Again, look at that example on page 47, the way that it wraps to the end of the right side of the paper before it goes down to the next line, because this is another formatting thing that EasyBib messes up. So just be aware of things like that. So here's your writing assignment. You're going to make a correctly formatted works cited entry for the essay Let Them Eat Dog in your Bridging the Difference book. So you can go back to that example that I showed you. Everything is going to be exactly the same for that talking with your fingers example that I showed you, except obviously this is a different essay, so the essay title will be different, the author will be different, and the page numbers will be different. Everything else will be the same. And then you're also going to make a correctly formatted entry for the documentary The Cove. So if you go to IMDb and type in The Cove, it'll pop up. You just click on it and it will give you all the information that you need. Now you can type this or you can handwrite it. If you handwrite it, make sure you underline the things that are supposed to be italicized so that I can see that you know that they're supposed to be italicized. And you still, whether you're handwriting it or typing it, need to use the correct format, meaning the first line needs to be flush with the margin, every other line needs to get indented. So don't forget about little things like that. Don't forget about the periods and the commas and those kinds of things. And you don't have to memorize all of this. Like I said, make use of your book. Compare what you've come up with the examples in the book and make sure that they match. All right, so if you have any questions about this, send me an email. Otherwise, we'll talk a little more about it the next time I see you in class.